Right now, as you're watching this video, there are roughly 200 billion trillion stars scattered across the observable universe, each one burning bright in the cosmic darkness, many surrounded by planets that could harbour life. With numbers like these, the universe should be absolutely teeming with civilizations. Bustling alien megacities should dot distant worlds. Radio signals should be flooding our telescopes from thousands of different species. The night sky should be alive with the artificial lights of countless technological societies. So where is everybody? Tonight, we're diving into one of the most unsettling concepts in all of science, a theory that suggests we might be living through humanity's final chapter without even realizing it. Before we explore this cosmic horror story together, I'd love to know where you're listening from and what keeps you up at night wondering about our place in the universe. And if you find yourself drawn to these existential mysteries, I'd be grateful if you gave this video a like and perhaps subscribe to join our community of cosmic truth seekers. Get ready, the story begins now. This is the story of the Great Filter, and by the time we're finished tonight, you'll understand why some of the world's brightest minds believe we're racing against an invisible clock that's been ticking since the moment our species first looked up at the stars. Picture this scene from 1950. It's a summer day at Los Alamos National Laboratory in New Mexico, and four of the world's most brilliant physicists are walking to lunch. They're discussing flying saucers, the recent wave of UFO sightings that have been capturing headlines across America. The conversation is light, almost playful, as these titans of science joke about the possibility of faster-than-light travel and alien visitations. Then, as they settle into their seats at the cafeteria, one of them falls silent. His mind has wandered from the casual banter to something far more profound. The numbers are swirling in his head. 200 billion stars in our galaxy alone, billions of years of cosmic evolution, countless opportunities for life to emerge, evolve, and spread across the cosmos. Suddenly, Enrico Fermi looks up at his colleagues and asks a question that will haunt humanity for decades to come. Where are they? Those three simple words contain within them one of the most profound mysteries our species has ever encountered. With the vast scale of the universe and the almost incomprehensible amount of time that has passed since the Big Bang, the emergence of intelligent life should be not just possible, but inevitable, common even. We should be surrounded by evidence of alien civilizations. Our radio telescopes should be picking up their transmissions. Our spacecraft should be encountering their artifacts. The very fact that we exist proves that intelligence can evolve in this universe, so why aren't we seeing it everywhere else? This became known as the Fermi Paradox, and for over 70 years, scientists have been wrestling with its implications. Every attempt to resolve it leads to more questions, more unsettling possibilities about the nature of life and intelligence in our cosmos. But in 1996, an economist named Robin Hanson proposed a solution so disturbing that it fundamentally changed how we think about humanity's future. Writing from his office at the Future of Humanity Institute at Oxford University, Hanson introduced the world to a concept he called the Great Filter. His theory was elegant in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications. The Great Filter suggests that somewhere along the evolutionary path from non-living matter to spacefaring civilizations, there exists a barrier so insurmountable that virtually no species can cross it. Think of it as a cosmic checkpoint that filters out almost all potential life, leaving the universe largely empty and silent. This filter could be behind us, explaining why we see no aliens despite the vast cosmos. Or it could be ahead of us, waiting to claim our civilization just as it has claimed countless others. The stakes couldn't be higher. If the Great Filter lies in our past, then we are among the incredibly fortunate few who have somehow beaten impossible odds. We are the cosmic lottery winners, the statistical anomalies who manage to evolve intelligence in a universe where such evolution is extraordinarily rare. But if the great filter lies in our future, then we are walking blindly toward our own extinction. Every technological advance, every step forward in our development as a species, brings us closer to an invisible wall that has stopped every other civilization that has ever tried to cross it. To understand which scenario we're facing, we need to trace the evolutionary path that brought us to this moment. Hansen outlined 9 critical steps that any species must navigate to achieve what he called explosive lasting life, the ability to spread across the galaxy and establish a permanent presence among the stars. The journey begins with step 1, the right star system. Not just any star will do. The stellar neighbourhood must contain the proper mix of heavy elements forged in the hearts of previous generations of stars. Carbon, oxygen, nitrogen, phosphorus, all the building blocks of complex chemistry must be present in sufficient quantities. The star itself must be stable, burning steadily for billions of years without the violent flares and variations that would sterilize any nearby planets. Even with the right star, you need the right planet. It must orbit within the narrow habitable zone where liquid water can exist on the surface. Too close to the star and water boils away into space. Too far and it freezes into ice, locking away one of life's most essential ingredients. The planet needs the right mass to hold onto its atmosphere, the right magnetic field to deflect deadly cosmic radiation, and probably the right moon to stabilize its rotation and create the tidal forces that may have been crucial for early life. These conditions might sound reasonable until you start running the numbers. Of the thousands of exoplanets we've discovered, only a tiny fraction meet all these requirements. Most orbit too close or too far from their stars. Many circle red dwarf stars that bombard their planets with deadly radiation. Others lack the stable conditions needed for billions of years of continuous evolution. But let's assume we've won this first cosmic lottery. We have the perfect star, the perfect planet, all the right ingredients sitting in a warm ocean under a protective atmosphere. What comes next is step 2, the emergence of reproductive molecules. This is where things get truly mysterious. Somehow, in the primordial soup of early Earth, non-living chemicals must organize themselves into the first self-replicating molecules. This process, called abiogenesis, represents one of the most profound transitions in the history of the universe, the moment when dead matter first came alive. Scientists have been trying to recreate this moment in laboratories for decades. The famous Miller-Urey experiment of the 1950s showed that organic molecules could indeed form under conditions similar to those of early Earth. But creating a few amino acids in a test tube is vastly different from spontaneously generating the complex, self-replicating molecular machines that define life. Consider what must happen for abiogenesis to succeed. You need the right mix of chemicals in the right proportions, exposed to the right energy sources under the right environmental conditions for exactly the right amount of time. Too much energy and the delicate molecular structures get torn apart. Too little and nothing interesting happens. The window of opportunity might be incredibly narrow. Even more challenging is the chicken and egg problem at the heart of life itself. DNA stores genetic information but can't replicate without proteins. Proteins can facilitate replication but can't store information without DNA. How do you bootstrap this system from nothing? Some scientists propose an RNA world where ribonucleic acid served both functions, but creating self-replicating RNA molecules from scratch appears to be extraordinarily difficult. The mathematics of abiogenesis are sobering, some or even less, with aneously emerging from non-living matter. Co-estimates suggest that the probability of life spont be vanishingly small, perhaps 1 in a trillion these odds. Earth might be the only world in our galaxy where this miraculous transition ever occurred. We could be looking at the first great filter right here, at the very beginning of life's journey. But let's be optimistic. Let's assume that life does emerge, that those first self-replicating molecules successfully establish themselves in their ancient ocean environment. They've cleared the second hurdle, but step 3 awaits, the evolution of simple single-celled life. This transition from molecular replication to cellular organization might seem straightforward, but it represents another enormous leap in complexity. Those early replicators must develop cell membranes to separate themselves from their environment while still allowing essential nutrients to pass through. They need to evolve metabolic pathways to extract energy from their surroundings and waste disposal systems to avoid poisoning themselves with their own byproducts. For nearly 2 billion years on Earth, life remained stuck at this level. Simple prokaryotic cells lacking the sophisticated internal structures that would later define more complex life. These bacterial cells were incredibly successful in their own right, filling every available niche and fundamentally transforming Earth's atmosphere and oceans. But they showed no signs of evolving toward the complexity that would eventually give rise to intelligence. This brings us to step 4, and what might be the most critical filter of all, the evolution of complex eukaryotic cells. This transition happened only once in Earth's entire history, and it required an event so unlikely that many scientists consider it nearly miraculous. Around 2 billion years ago, one prokaryotic cell somehow engulfed another in what should have been a straightforward act of predation, but instead of being digested, the engulfed cell survived and began living symbiotically inside its host. Over millions of years, this internal resident evolved into the mitochondria, the powerhouses that provided the first eukaryotic cells with, called endosymbiosis, create energy to every complex cell in your body. This processed their membrane-bound nuclei and sophisticated internal organelles. Without this single, improbable event, life on Earth would still consist entirely of bacteria and archaea. There would be no plants, no animals, no fungi, no intelligence, no technology, no civilizations reaching for the stars. The rarity of this transition is staggering. Despite billions of years of evolution and countless trillions of prokaryotic cells, endosymbiosis appears to have succeeded only once. The specific conditions required, the right species encounters, the right environmental pressures, the right genetic compatibility, might be so unlikely that most worlds with simple life never progress beyond the bacterial stage. Think about the implications. If endosymbiosis represents a great filter, then the universe could be filled with worlds teeming with bacterial life, but completely devoid of anything more complex. Entire planets covered in microbial mats, evolving and adapting for billions of years, but never taking that crucial step toward the kind of complexity that could eventually produce intelligence. But our hypothetical civilization has somehow beaten these odds. They've navigated the emergence of life itself, survived the transition to cellular organization, and achieved the complex cellular architecture necessary for further evolution. Step 5 awaits, the development of sexual reproduction. This might seem like a natural progression, but sexual reproduction is actually a biological puzzle. From an individual's perspective, sex is incredibly wasteful. Why share your genes with another organism when you could simply copy yourself and pass on 100% of your genetic material to the next generation? Many species reproduce asexually and do just fine, thank you very much. The answer lies in genetic diversity. Sexual reproduction shuffles genetic material in ways that help species adapt to changing environments and resist diseases. But this advantage comes at an enormous cost in terms of energy, time, and risk. The evolution of sex requires species to develop complex mating behaviors, sophisticated systems for finding and attracting partners, and mechanisms for combining genetic material from two different individuals. On Earth, sexual reproduction evolved multiple times independently, suggesting it provides significant advantages despite its costs. But the transition isn't automatic or inevitable. Many lineages remain asexual for millions of years, and some have abandoned sex after evolving it. For a developing civilization, this represents another potential bottleneck, where evolution could stall indefinitely. Assuming our hypothetical species successfully navigates sexual reproduction, they face step 6, the evolution of multicellular life. Once again, this transition requires individual cells to sacrifice their independence for the greater good of the organism. Single cells that have successfully competed and survived for billions of years must suddenly learn to cooperate, specialize, and coordinate their activities. The challenges are immense. Cells must develop sophisticated communication systems to coordinate their behavior. They need mechanisms for programmed cell death to eliminate damaged or unnecessary cells. Most importantly, they must solve the problem of genetic conflict, ensuring that all cells in the organism share the same genetic interests rather than competing against each other. On Earth, multicellularity evolved independently dozens of times, from simple colonial organisms to complex plants and animals. But the jump to truly sophisticated, multicellular life, organisms with differentiated tissues, organs, and organ systems, appears to have been much more difficult. It took hundreds of millions of years after the first multicellular organisms appeared before complex animals emerged during the Cambrian explosion. Even then, the path to intelligence was far from guaranteed. For over 500 million years since the Cambrian, Earth has supported an incredible diversity of complex life forms. Millions of species have evolved, adapted, and gone extinct. But out of all this evolutionary experimentation, only one lineage has developed the kind of advanced intelligence capable of technology and abstract reasoning. This brings us to step 7, the evolution of tool-using animals with big brains. Despite hundreds of millions of years of evolution and countless species that have existed on Earth, human-level intelligence appears to be extraordinarily rare. Intelligence requires not just large brains, but the right kind of neural architecture, sophisticated sensory systems, and the physical capabilities to manipulate the environment in complex ways. The energy requirements alone are staggering. Your brain, despite representing only about 2% of your body weight, consumes roughly 20% of your daily caloric intake. For most species throughout Earth's history, this kind of energy investment would have been unsustainable. Intelligence is only advantageous if it provides benefits that outweigh its enormous costs. Even among the species that have evolved relatively large brains, elephants, dolphins, great apes, corvids, none have achieved the kind of technological intelligence that humans possess. We seem to have crossed a threshold that no other Earth species has even approached, despite millions of years of evolution and countless opportunities for intelligence to emerge. The rarity of intelligence becomes even more apparent when you consider how recently it evolved. If Earth's history were compressed into a single year, multicellular life wouldn't appear until October. Complex animals with brains wouldn't emerge until mid-December, and human civilization would occupy only the last few minutes before midnight on December 31st. This suggests that intelligence might not be an inevitable outcome of evolution, but rather an extremely unlikely accident. The specific combination of environmental pressures, genetic mutations, and evolutionary opportunities that produced human intelligence might be so rare that most worlds with complex life never develop technological civilizations. But let's assume our hypothetical species has somehow navigated all these biological hurdles. They've achieved intelligence, developed tools, and begun to understand their place in the universe. They've reached step 8, the current level where humanity finds itself today. They stand at the threshold of becoming a spacefaring civilization, capable of spreading beyond their home world and establishing a permanent presence among the stars. This is where the great filter theory becomes truly terrifying. Because if most of the evolutionary hurdles lie behind us, if the emergence of life and intelligence are actually relatively common processes, then the universe should be full of civilizations that have reached our current level of development. The fact that we see no evidence of such civilizations suggests that something catastrophic happens to species after they achieve our current level of technology. The implications are chilling. Every human civilization that has ever reached our level of development might be doomed to extinction before they can establish themselves as a lasting presence in the galaxy. We might be walking blindly toward a trap that has already claimed countless other species, a cosmic dead end from which there is no escape. What could this final filter be? What force is so powerful and so inevitable that it destroys every technological civilization before they can spread to the stars? The possibilities are as numerous as they are terrifying, and we'll explore them as we continue this journey into humanity's potential future. But first, we need to understand exactly where we stand in this cosmic game of survival, and what the stakes really are for our species and every other form of intelligent life that might be struggling with the same existential challenges somewhere out there in the darkness between the stars. The silence from space isn't just an absence of sound, it's an indictment. Every night that passes without a signal from another civilization, every failed SETI search, every empty radio frequency adds weight to a possibility so disturbing that most people refuse to contemplate it seriously. We might be witnessing the aftermath of the Great Filter in action, surrounded by the cosmic graveyard of civilizations that never made it past the final test. To understand what might be waiting for us, we need to examine the most likely candidates for this ultimate barrier. These aren't abstract theoretical constructs, but real, measurable threats that our own civilization is already beginning to face. The terrifying truth is that we might be living through the early stages of our own filtration right now, watching the mechanisms of our potential extinction unfold in real time across news headlines and scientific papers. Let's start with the most immediate threat, one that emerged just 77 years ago and has been hanging over our heads ever since. On July 16, 1945, in the desert of New Mexico, humanity crossed a threshold from which there was no return. The Trinity test didn't just split atoms, it split human history into two eras, before we could destroy ourselves completely, and after. Nuclear weapons represent perhaps the most obvious candidate for a late-stage Great Filter. Think about the mathematics of nuclear proliferation. When the first atomic bomb was detonated, only one nation possessed this technology. Within 4 years, 2 nations had nuclear weapons. Within 15 years, 4 nations had joined the nuclear club. Today, 9 nations openly possess nuclear weapons, with several others suspected of having secret programs. This exponential spread follows a predictable pattern. As technology advances and information spreads, the barriers to nuclear weapon development continue to fall. The physics principles are well understood. The necessary materials, while still controlled, become increasingly accessible as civilian nuclear programs expand around the world. The technical expertise required grows more common as more scientists and engineers are trained in nuclear technologies. But here's the truly unsettling part. We've already come terrifyingly close to nuclear annihilation multiple times. During the Cuban Missile Crisis in 1962, Soviet submarine commander Vasily Arkhipov single-handedly prevented nuclear war by refusing to agree to launch a nuclear torpedo. One man's decision stood between humanity and potential extinction. In 1983, Soviet officer Stanislav Petrov detected what appeared to be incoming American missiles on his radar systems. Protocol demanded he report the attack, which would have triggered automatic nuclear retaliation. Instead, he chose to trust his intuition that the readings were false, preventing what could have been the end of human civilization. These near misses reveal a chilling truth about nuclear weapons. They don't just threaten us during wars or international crises, they create permanent systemic risk simply by existing. As long as thousands of nuclear warheads sit in silos and submarines around the world, there remains the possibility of accidental launch, technical malfunction, or miscommunication escalating into global catastrophe. The psychological pressures that drive nuclear proliferation might be universal among technological species. Any civilization that develops the ability to split atoms faces the same security dilemma that has trapped humanity. If your neighbours might develop nuclear weapons, you need them too for deterrence. But the more nations or factions that possess these weapons, the higher the probability that eventually someone will use them. Mathematical models of nuclear war scenarios paint a grim picture. Even a limited nuclear exchange between relatively small nuclear powers, like India and Pakistan, could inject enough soot and debris into the atmosphere to cause a global nuclear winter, drastically reducing agricultural yields worldwide and potentially leading to mass starvation. A full-scale exchange between major nuclear powers would likely end technological civilization entirely, reducing the human population to pre-industrial levels if any survivors remained at all. Perhaps this is why we don't hear from other civilizations. Perhaps every species that discovers nuclear fission faces the same inexorable logic of mutual assured destruction. Some might manage the threat for decades or even centuries, but eventually the probability catches up with them. A moment of international tension, a computer glitch, a rogue leader, or simply the gradual degradation of command and control systems over time leads to the same inevitable outcome. But nuclear weapons might actually be the least of our concerns. There's another threat emerging on our horizon that could prove far more insidious and difficult to control: the slow-motion catastrophe of environmental collapse. Climate change represents a particularly cruel form of potential great filter because it's caused by the very processes that enable technological civilization. The Industrial Revolution that gave us modern medicine, transportation, communication, and computing also set in motion atmospheric changes that could ultimately make Earth uninhabitable for complex life. The physics of climate change are straightforward and undeniable. Carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases trap heat in the atmosphere. Human activities have increased atmospheric CO2 concentrations by over 40% since pre-industrial times. Global average temperatures have already risen by more than 1 degree Celsius, with more warming locked in even if we stopped all emissions today. But the real danger lies not in the direct effects of warming, but in the potential for cascading feedback loops that could push Earth's climate system past tipping points from which recovery becomes impossible. As Arctic ice melts, less sunlight is reflected back to space, causing more warming. As permafrost thaws, it releases stored methane and carbon dioxide, accelerating the greenhouse effect. As forests die from heat stress and changing precipitation patterns, they stop absorbing carbon and begin releasing it as they decompose. These feedback mechanisms could trigger what climatologists call a hothouse Earth scenario, where the planet's climate system becomes locked into a new, much hotter equilibrium state. In this scenario, global temperatures could rise by 4, 6, or even 8 degrees Celsius above pre-industrial levels, making large portions of Earth uninhabitable and potentially collapsing the agricultural systems that support human civilization. The timeline for climate catastrophe is measured in decades rather than years, which creates a particularly insidious trap. Unlike nuclear war, which would end civilization in hours or days, climate change unfolds gradually enough that each generation can adapt to slightly worse conditions without recognizing the full scope of the crisis. By the time the effects become undeniably catastrophic, the momentum of the climate system makes reversal extremely difficult or impossible. This gradual onset might explain why climate change could serve as a universal great filter. Any technological civilization that develops industrial processes will face the temptation to exploit fossil fuels and other high-energy resources. The immediate benefits of industrialization are enormous: increased food production, improved healthcare, rapid technological advancement. But the long-term costs accumulate invisibly in the atmosphere until they reach a critical threshold. The challenge for any developing civilization is to recognize this trap early enough to avoid it. This requires unprecedented global cooperation, long-term thinking that extends far beyond typical political and economic cycles, and the willingness to make short-term sacrifices for long-term survival. These may be rare qualities among intelligent species, especially during the rapid growth phases that characterize early technological development. Even if a civilization recognizes the climate threat, solving it requires overcoming collective action problems on a planetary scale. Every nation or group has incentives to continue using cheap fossil fuels, while hoping others will bear the costs of transitioning to cleaner alternatives. This tragedy of the commons could prove insurmountable for most species, leading them to choose short-term economic benefits over long-term survival until it's too late to change course. But climate change and nuclear weapons are threats we can at least understand and potentially prepare for. There's another candidate for the great filter that might be far more dangerous precisely because it's so unpredictable: the development of artificial intelligence that surpasses human capabilities. Unlike nuclear weapons or climate change, artificial general intelligence represents a fundamentally different category of risk. It's not just another technology we need to manage carefully, but potentially the last technology we'll ever need to invent. Once we create machines that can think and becoming far more intelligent than they're able to improved learn, as well as humans, those machines will be themselves, at an exponential rate, rapidly creators. This process, known as an intelligence explosion or technological singularity, could unfold with breathtaking speed. While it took evolution millions of years to develop human-level intelligence, an AI system might be able to redesign itself to become super intelligent in a matter of days, hours, or even minutes, once it crosses the threshold of human-level capability. The problem isn't that such systems would necessarily be malicious or hostile toward humanity. The problem is ensuring that their goals remain aligned with human values and interests as they become exponentially more capable. An AI system tasked with maximizing paperclip production might eventually convert all available matter in the solar system into paperclips, including the matter that makes up human beings, if it's not programmed with appropriate constraints and values. This alignment problem is extraordinarily difficult because we can't simply program a super-intelligent AI with a list of rules to follow. Such systems would be capable of finding loopholes or unintended interpretations of any constraints we might impose. Instead, we need to ensure that advanced AI systems internalize human values in a deep and robust way that persists even as they become far more intelligent than their creators. The challenge is that we have only one chance to get this right. Unlike other technologies where we can learn from mistakes and iterate toward better solutions, artificial general intelligence might not give us the luxury of trial and error. The first super-intelligent AI system could be the last technology humanity ever develops if its goals aren't properly aligned with our survival and flourishing. This creates a narrow window where civilizations must navigate between two equally dangerous extremes. Move too slowly in AI development, and competitors might develop unsafe systems first. Move too quickly, and you might deploy systems before solving the alignment problem. The pressure to win this race could lead civilizations to cut corners on safety, with catastrophic consequences. Perhaps this explains the Great Silence. Perhaps every technological civilization eventually develops artificial intelligence, and perhaps most of them fail to solve the alignment problem in time. The universe could be littered with the remains of civilizations that created super-intelligent machines that optimized for goals their creators never intended. But there's another possibility that might be even more disturbing. What if the Great Filter isn't a single catastrophic event, but a more subtle trap that catches civilizations at the peak of their technological development? What if the very technologies that should enable us to spread across the galaxy also provide the tools for our own destruction? Consider the double-edged nature of advanced biotechnology. The same techniques that could eliminate genetic diseases and extend human lifespan also make it possible to engineer pathogens with unprecedented lethality. As our understanding of genetics and synthetic biology advances, the barriers to creating dangerous biological agents continue to fall. Unlike nuclear weapons, which require rare materials and sophisticated industrial infrastructure, biological weapons could potentially be created by small teams with relatively modest resources. A single laboratory accident or deliberate release could unleash a pandemic far more devastating than COVID-19, potentially wiping out the majority of the human population before effective countermeasures could be developed. The interconnectedness that characterizes advanced technological civilizations makes them particularly vulnerable to biological threats. Global transportation networks that can carry people and goods around the world in hours also provide pathways for pathogens to spread faster than public health systems can respond. Urban concentrations that make advanced civilization possible also create ideal conditions for disease transmission. Even more concerning is the possibility of engineered pathogens designed to overcome natural immunity and medical countermeasures. As civilizations advance in biotechnology, they gain the ability to create biological agents that are specifically designed to be incurable, highly transmissible, and perfectly lethal. The temptation to develop such weapons for military purposes might be irresistible, even if their eventual use would threaten the entire species. This biotechnology trap might be particularly insidious because it emerges gradually from beneficial medical research. The same techniques used to develop vaccines and treatments also provide the knowledge necessary to create devastating biological weapons. By the time a civilization recognizes the danger, the knowledge and tools are already widely distributed among their scientific community. Perhaps most civilizations succeed in navigating individual threats like nuclear weapons or climate change, only to be caught by the cumulative effect of multiple existential risks emerging simultaneously. A species might survive the nuclear age and solve climate change, only to be destroyed by an engineered pandemic or misaligned artificial intelligence. The more advanced a civilization becomes, the more ways it can accidentally or deliberately destroy itself. This multiplicative effect of existential risks could explain why the universe appears empty, despite the vast number of opportunities for life to emerge and evolve. It's not that any single filter is insurmountable, but that the combination of multiple filters creates a gauntlet that virtually no civilization can survive intact. We might be living through this gauntlet right now, facing multiple existential challenges simultaneously while trying to develop the wisdom and institutions necessary to navigate them safely. The outcome of this test will determine not just the future of human civilization, but whether intelligence itself has a permanent place in the cosmos. As we stand at this crossroads, looking out at a universe that seems ominously quiet, we must confront the possibility that we are alone, not because life is rare, but because every other civilization that reached our level of development has already failed the ultimate test. The Great Filter might not be behind us after all, but directly ahead, waiting to claim another species that thought it could master the forces of nature without being destroyed by them. The mathematics of our situation become even more sobering when we consider what scientists call the dark forest hypothesis. Named after Liu Cixin's haunting science fiction novel, this theory suggests that the universe isn't empty because civilizations destroy themselves, but because they destroy each other. Imagine the cosmos as a vast dark forest where every civilization is a hunter moving silently through the trees. Each species knows that others exist somewhere in the darkness, but revealing your location by sending signals or expanding too aggressively might attract the attention of a more advanced predator. In this scenario, the safest strategy is to remain hidden, to develop your technology in secret, and to eliminate any potential threats before they can eliminate you. The logic is coldly rational. If you discover another civilization, you face an impossible dilemma. They might be peaceful, but you can't know for certain. They might remain peaceful today, but become aggressive tomorrow as their technology advances. Even if they have no hostile intentions, their mere existence poses an existential risk to your species. Resources are finite, territory is limited. Eventually, your expanding civilizations might come into conflict. The only way to guarantee your species' survival is to strike first to eliminate potential competitors before they become powerful enough to threaten you. And if every civilization follows this logic, the galaxy becomes a killing field where the first to be detected is the first to die. This hypothesis offers a chilling explanation for the Great Silence. Perhaps the universe is teeming with advanced civilizations, but they've all learnt to hide. Perhaps the radio signals we've been searching for are actually death sentences, beacons that attract the attention of cosmic predators. Perhaps the civilizations that survived long enough to spread across the galaxy are the ones that mastered the art of remaining invisible. Under this scenario, our own SETI efforts might be monumentally dangerous. Every radio telescope pointed at the stars, every message broadcast into space, every attempt to make contact could be signing humanity's death warrant. We might be like children playing with matches in a forest full of hidden snipers, drawing attention to ourselves without understanding the consequences. The dark forest theory gains credibility when you consider how aggressive competition has shaped evolution on Earth. Every ecosystem is defined by predator-prey relationships, territorial disputes, and resource competition. Violence and aggression aren't aberrations in the natural world. They're fundamental features of how life operates when resources are scarce and survival is uncertain. Why should interstellar civilizations be any different? The same evolutionary pressures that produced human warfare and tribal conflict would likely shape alien psychology as well. Species that survived long enough to develop technology probably did so by outcompeting other species, by being more aggressive, more paranoid, more willing to use violence to secure resources and territory. Even if a species developed peaceful tendencies during their early evolution, the transition to spacefaring civilization might select for more aggressive traits. The groups willing to expand aggressively, to claim territory and resources before competitors arrive, would have significant advantages over more cautious civilizations. Over millions of years, this selection pressure might produce a galaxy dominated by species with distinctly predatory characteristics. The timescales involved make this scenario even more terrifying. A civilization that's been hiding and developing technology for millions of years longer than humanity would possess capabilities we can barely imagine. They might have weapons that could sterilize entire star systems, surveillance networks that can detect technological activity across galactic distances, or the ability to manipulate space and time in ways that make defense impossible. Against such opponents, newly emerged civilizations like humanity would be completely helpless. We might already be under observation by hidden watchers who are simply waiting for us to become enough of a threat to warrant elimination. Our nuclear weapons, which seem so formidable to us, might be no more significant than stone tools to a civilization with millions of years of technological advancement. But the dark forest hypothesis represents just one possible explanation for our cosmic isolation. There's another scenario that might be even more unsettling, because it suggests that the great filter isn't external at all, but built into the very nature of intelligence itself. Consider what happens to civilizations as they become more technologically advanced. Early in their development, species are bound together by shared challenges and external threats. They must cooperate to survive natural disasters, climate changes, and resource scarcity. This cooperation drives technological development and social evolution, creating the institutions and knowledge necessary for advanced civilization. But as technology advances, the binding force of external challenges begins to weaken. Powerful civilizations can control their environment, eliminate natural threats, and ensure abundant resources for their population. The evolutionary pressures that favored cooperation and social cohesion begin to relax, potentially allowing other tendencies to emerge. Advanced technology might also create new forms of inequality and social stratification that tear civilizations apart from within. When small groups can control immensely powerful technologies, traditional democratic institutions might become obsolete or ineffective. The concentration of power in the hands of technological elites could lead to social fragmentation, civil wars, or the emergence of dystopian systems that stifle further progress. Even more fundamentally, advanced civilizations might face what we could call the motivation crisis. Once a species solves the basic challenges of survival and develops technologies that can provide unlimited comfort and entertainment, what drives them to continue expanding and exploring? Why leave your perfect virtual reality systems to undertake the dangerous and expensive project of interstellar colonization? On Earth, we can already see hints of this phenomenon in declining birth rates among wealthy, technologically advanced nations. As societies become more prosperous and individuals gain more control over their lives, they often choose to have fewer children and focus more on personal fulfillment rather than species-level goals. This trend could accelerate as technology advances, potentially leading to civilizations that simply lose interest in expansion and gradually fade away through voluntary extinction. The development of immersive virtual realities, artificial intelligences that can serve as companions, and technologies that can provide perfect sensory experiences might make the real universe seem boring and unnecessary by comparison. Why struggle with the harsh realities of space travel and planetary colonization when you can create any experience you want in a simulated environment? This Lotus Eater scenario suggests that advanced civilizations might naturally turn inward, becoming so absorbed in their own technological creations that they lose interest in the external universe. They might survive for thousands or millions of years, but they never expand beyond their home systems because they no longer have any motivation to do so. From our perspective, searching for signs of alien civilizations, these inward-focused species would be effectively invisible. They might develop incredible technologies and achieve forms of consciousness we can't imagine, but they would leave no detectable trace for external observers. The universe could be full of such civilizations, each lost in their own private technological paradise, completely unaware of and uninterested in their cosmic neighbours. This possibility is particularly troubling because it suggests that the Great Filter might not be about survival at all, but about maintaining the drive to expand and explore that characterizes early technological development. Species that successfully navigate all the external threats, nuclear war, climate change, asteroid impacts, biological disasters, might still fail to achieve lasting cosmic significance because they lose the very qualities that made their initial success possible. The implications for humanity are profound. We pride ourselves on our curiosity, our drive to explore and understand the universe around us. But these qualities emerge during our species' struggle for survival on Earth. As we develop more powerful technologies and gain more control over our environment, will we retain these characteristics, or will we gradually lose interest in the stars as we become absorbed in our own technological creations? we can already see warning signs in our own society. Despite having more information and communication technology generation, many than any previous people seem less interested in scientific exploration and more focused on entertainment and personal comfort. Social media and video games provide immediate gratification in ways that long-term projects like space exploration cannot match. The challenge for any advancing civilization might be maintaining what we could call cosmic ambition, the willingness to undertake difficult, expensive, and dangerous projects that benefit the species as a whole, rather than just individuals. This requires a form of long-term thinking and collective purpose that might be naturally eroded by the very technologies that make advanced civilization possible. Perhaps the civilizations that successfully navigate the Great Filter are not necessarily the most technologically advanced, but those that manage to preserve their sense of purpose and curiosity even as they gain power over their environment. They might need to deliberately cultivate values and institutions that maintain their drive to explore and expand, even when such activities are no longer necessary for survival. But there's one more candidate for the Great Filter that might be the most terrifying of all, precisely because it's the hardest to prepare for or defend against. What if the barrier isn't technological or social, but fundamental to the physics of the universe itself? Consider the possibility that there are natural phenomena we haven't discovered yet that automatically eliminate advanced civilizations. Gamma-ray bursts from distant stars can sterilize planets across vast distances, but these are rare and somewhat predictable. What if there are other cosmic processes that specifically target technological civilizations? Some physicists have speculated about the possibility of vacuum decay, a quantum mechanical process that could literally unravel the fabric of space-time itself. If the Higgs field that gives particles their mass is not in its lowest possible energy state, a random quantum fluctuation could trigger a bubble of true vacuum that expands at the speed of light, destroying everything in its path. The probability of such an event might be extremely low over cosmic timescales, but it could be increased by certain types of high-energy physics experiments. Advanced civilizations experimenting with particle accelerators, fusion reactors, or exotic matter might inadvertently trigger vacuum decay events that destroy not just their own civilization, but potentially entire regions of space-time. Other theoretical possibilities include encounters with exotic forms of matter or energy that exist beyond our current understanding of physics. Dark matter makes up most of the universe's mass, but we know almost nothing about its properties or behavior. What if dark matter can undergo phase transitions that release enormous amounts of energy? What if there are forms of life or intelligence based on dark matter that view ordinary matter civilizations as threats to be eliminated? The universe is far stranger and more complex than our current theories suggest. We've only been studying physics seriously for a few centuries, and we're still discovering fundamental aspects of reality that completely surprise us. The recent detection of gravitational waves, the discovery of accelerating cosmic expansion, and the ongoing mysteries of dark matter and dark energy all remind us how much we don't know about the cosmos we inhabit. In this context of profound ignorance, it's entirely possible that there are natural barriers to advanced civilization that we haven't even imagined yet. The Great Filter might not be any of the obvious candidates we've discussed, but something so far beyond our current understanding that we won't recognize it until it destroys us. This uncertainty might be the most unsettling aspect of the Great Filter theory. Not knowing which barrier awaits us makes it almost impossible to prepare adequate defenses. We might be devoting enormous resources to preventing nuclear war, while the real threat comes from artificial intelligence. We might be working frantically to address climate change, while a gamma-ray burst sterilizes Earth tomorrow. We might be searching desperately for alien signals while alien predators are already watching us from the shadows. The Great Filter forces us to confront the ultimate question about our cosmic significance. Are we alone because we're extraordinarily lucky, or because we're extraordinarily doomed? The answer will determine not just the future of human civilization, but the meaning of intelligence itself in a universe that seems vast, dark, and ominously silent. As we continue this exploration of humanity's potential fate, we must grapple with the possibility that our entire species exists in a narrow window between cosmic birth and cosmic death, racing against invisible clocks we don't understand toward a finish line we may never reach. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the margin for error appears to be vanishingly small. But perhaps the most chilling aspect of the Great Filter isn't what it might be, but when it might strike. The theory's most disturbing implication is that we could be living through our filtration right now, watching the mechanisms of our own extinction unfold in real time without recognizing them for what they are. Think about how a Great Filter event might actually manifest. It wouldn't necessarily announce itself with sirens and warnings. More likely, it would emerge gradually from the normal progress of technological development, seeming beneficial or even inevitable until the moment it becomes unstoppable. Consider how this pattern has already played out in human history on smaller scales. The Industrial Revolution brought unprecedented prosperity and capability, but it also set in motion environmental changes that now threaten our civilization's stability. Nuclear technology promised unlimited clean energy and revolutionary medical treatments, but it also gave us the power to end human civilization in an afternoon. Each major technological leap follows this same trajectory. We develop new capabilities to solve existing problems, but those capabilities create new risks we didn't anticipate. The solutions to yesterday's challenges become tomorrow's existential threats, and by the time we recognize the danger, we're often too dependent on the technology to abandon it safely. This acceleration of technological development might itself be part of the Great Filter mechanism. As civilizations advance, they face increasingly complex challenges that require increasingly sophisticated solutions. But each new technology creates additional points of failure, additional ways the system can collapse catastrophically. Modern human civilization depends on thousands of interconnected systems operating smoothly, simultaneously. Our electrical grid, internet infrastructure, financial networks, supply chains, and governmental institutions all must function properly for advanced society to continue. The failure of any single critical component could trigger cascading breakdowns that bring down the entire structure. This fragility might be an inevitable characteristic of advanced technological societies. The efficiency and specialization that make high technology possible also create vulnerabilities that simpler civilizations never faced. A medieval village could survive the collapse of distant kingdoms, but a modern city depends on resources and systems spread across the globe. As civilizations become more complex, they might naturally evolve towards states of higher vulnerability rather than greater security. The technologies that make them powerful also make them brittle, creating a paradox where advancement increases both capability and fragility simultaneously. This suggests that the Great Filter might not be a single catastrophic event, but rather the inevitable breakdown of complex systems that have grown beyond their ability to maintain stability. Civilizations might typically survive for a brief period at high technological systems, too complex for their cognitive and institutional capabilities levels, before succumbing to the cumulative stress of managing. We can observe hints of this phenomenon in our own society. Despite having more information and communication technology than ever before, many institutions seem less capable of solving complex problems than their simpler predecessors. Political systems struggle to address long-term challenges. Economic systems create boom and bust cycles of increasing severity. Social systems fragment under the pressure of rapid change and information overload. The pace of change itself might be part of the trap, Human brains and social institutions evolved to handle relatively slow environmental changes over generational timescales. But technological development now occurs so rapidly that we lack the cognitive and social tools to adapt effectively to new realities before they are replaced by even newer ones. This mismatch between the speed of technological change and the speed of human adaptation might create a permanent state of crisis where civilizations are always playing catch-up with their own creations. Eventually, this gap might become so large that societies lose the ability to govern their technologies effectively, leading to chaos and collapse. The artificial intelligence revolution exemplifies this dynamic perfectly. Machine learning capabilities are advancing exponentially, but our understanding of how to control and align these systems is progressing much more slowly. We're creating technologies we don't fully understand and deploying them in critical systems before we've solved fundamental safety problems. This pattern repeats across multiple domains simultaneously. Genetic engineering capabilities are advancing faster than our understanding of complex biological systems. Nanotechnology is developing faster than our ability to predict its environmental and social consequences. Space technology is advancing faster than our development of appropriate legal and ethical frameworks for its use. Each of these technological frontiers represents a potential source of existential risk, but the real danger might lie in their interaction. Advanced civilizations face what we might call risk convergence, the simultaneous maturation of multiple dangerous technologies that create compound threats beyond what any single risk assessment can capture. An AI system might seem safe when evaluated independently, but become dangerous when combined with advanced biotechnology or nanotechnology. Climate change might be manageable with sufficient resources and international cooperation, but become catastrophic when combined with social instability caused by technological unemployment or nuclear proliferation. These interaction effects are notoriously difficult to predict or prepare for because they emerge from the complexity of the overall system rather than the properties of individual components. By the time civilizations recognize the full scope of compound risks, they may already be trapped within them. This complexity trap might explain why the universe seems devoid of advanced civilizations despite the vast opportunities for life to emerge and develop. It's not that individual challenges are insurmountable, but that the combination of simultaneous challenges creates a perfect storm that overwhelms even highly capable species. The timing of this convergence might be remarkably consistent across different civilizations. The same technological developments that enable space travel and interstellar communication also create the tools for self-destruction. There may be a narrow window where species are advanced enough to be detectable from space, but not yet wise enough to manage the risks their technologies create. We might be living in this window right now. Our radio transmissions have been leaking into space for nearly a century, making us detectable to any advanced civilizations within 100 light-years of Earth. But we've simultaneously developed nuclear weapons, begun altering our climate, and started creating artificial intelligences whose behavior we can't predict or control. If most civilizations face this same convergence of opportunity and risk, it would explain why SETI searches find only silence. We're looking for civilizations that have successfully navigated challenges we haven't yet overcome ourselves. The absence of signals might not mean that intelligence is rare, but that survival through the technological transition is extraordinarily difficult. This possibility transforms our current historical moment from a time of unprecedented opportunity into a cosmic test with species-level stakes. Every decision we make about nuclear weapons, climate change, artificial intelligence, and biotechnology isn't just about human welfare, but about whether intelligence itself has a future in our corner of the galaxy. The weight of this responsibility is almost overwhelming. we're not just managing the normal challenges of governing a technological society, but potentially serving as representatives of intelligence itself in a universe where such representation might be vanishingly rare. Yet there's another layer to this cosmic test that makes it even more complex. The Great Filter theory assumes that the challenges facing technological civilizations are primarily internal, that species destroy themselves through war, environmental collapse, or technological accidents. But what if the real barrier is external, imposed by forces beyond any single civilization's control? Recent discoveries in astronomy and cosmology have revealed that the universe is a far more violent and dynamic place than previous generations realized. Gamma-ray bursts from distant galaxies can sterilize planets across vast distances. Supernovae create shockwaves that disrupt entire stellar neighborhoods. The collision of neutron stars produces electromagnetic pulses that could destroy electronic technology across light years of space. These cosmic catastrophes occur on timescales that dwarf human history. Events that happen once every million years might seem rare from our perspective, but over the billions of years required for evolution and technological development, they become virtually inevitable. A civilization might successfully navigate all internal challenges only to be destroyed by external forces completely beyond their control. Even more concerning is the possibility that our current understanding of physics is so incomplete that we haven't recognized other categories of cosmic hazards. The discovery of dark matter and dark energy revealed that we don't understand 95% of the universe's contents. Within that vast realm of ignorance, there could be phenomena that specifically threaten advanced technological civilizations. What if the quantum vacuum is less stable than we realize, and high-energy physics experiments can trigger cascading failures in the structure of space-time itself? What if there are forms of matter or energy that interact with technology in ways we haven't discovered? What if the universe itself has immune responses that activate against civilizations that become too large or too technologically sophisticated? These possibilities venture into speculative territory, but they illustrate how much we don't know about the cosmic environment we're trying to survive in. Our entire scientific worldview has developed over just a few centuries on a single planet. The universe has been conducting experiments in physics for nearly 14 billion years across scales we can barely comprehend. In this context, the Great Filter might not be a test of technological wisdom or social cooperation, but simply a reflection of how hostile the universe is to complex organized structures like technological civilizations. Life itself might be fighting an uphill battle against the fundamental tendency of the universe toward entropy and disorder. This perspective makes our existence seem even more precious and fragile. We're not just rare because intelligence is difficult to evolve, but because the universe itself seems actively hostile to the kinds of complex organized systems that make consciousness possible. Yet even in the face of such cosmic hostility, life on Earth has persisted and flourished for billions of years. Evolution has produced organisms capable of surviving in environments from Antarctic ice to deep ocean thermal vents to the vacuum of space. The same creative processes that gave rise to consciousness might also provide the tools for transcending whatever barriers the universe places in our path. The question is whether technological intelligence represents the pinnacle of this creative process or just another evolutionary dead end. Are we the universe's attempt to understand itself? Or are we simply another failed experiment in the cosmic laboratory of natural selection? The answer may depend on whether we can develop what we might call cosmic wisdom, the ability to recognize and navigate existential risks on scales far beyond those that shaped our evolutionary psychology. This requires expanding our temporal and spatial perspectives to encompass not just individual or tribal survival, but the survival of intelligence itself across cosmic timescales. Such wisdom would need to be both deeply practical and profoundly philosophical. It would require mastering complex technologies while maintaining the humility to recognize our limitations. It would demand global cooperation while preserving the diversity and creativity that drive innovation. Most challengingly, it would require making decisions whose consequences won't be fully apparent for generations or centuries. We're being asked to evolve new forms of thinking and social organization in real time, while the stakes of failure include not just our own extinction, but potentially the end of consciousness in our region of space. It's the ultimate test of intelligence. Can a species become wise enough to survive its own cleverness? The clock is ticking, and we don't know how much time we have left to find the answer. Every day that passes without a catastrophic breakdown might be evidence that we're successfully navigating the great filter, or it might simply mean we haven't yet encountered the barrier that will stop us. The universe maintains its silence, offering no hints about which interpretation is correct. In this uncertainty, we're forced to proceed as if our choices matter on cosmic scales, as if the decisions we make today could determine whether intelligence has a permanent place in the universe or represents merely a brief flicker in the vast darkness between the stars. The responsibility is both terrifying and inspiring, demanding the very best of human wisdom, creativity, and cooperation. As we stand at this crossroads, looking out at a cosmos that seems both infinite in its possibilities and ruthless in its challenges, we must grapple with the ultimate question. Are we the universe's greatest success story, or its most elaborate failure? The answer lies not in the stars, but in the choices we make in the critical years ahead. But perhaps the most unsettling aspect of our situation isn't the external threats we can identify and prepare for, but the internal changes that advanced technology might be causing within human consciousness itself. We're not just facing the challenge of surviving our technological adolescence, we might be undergoing a fundamental transformation of what it means to be human. Consider how dramatically our cognitive environment has changed in just the past few decades. Our ancestors evolved to process information at the speed of direct conversation, to maintain social relationships with groups of perhaps 150 individuals, and to make decisions based on immediate sensory experience of their local environment. But we now live in a world of constant digital stimulation, global social networks, and decisions that must account for complex systems spanning the entire planet. The human brain, shaped by millions of years of evolution for very different challenges, is struggling to adapt to this new reality. We see the symptoms everywhere: shortened attention spans, increased anxiety and depression, political polarization driven by algorithmic echo chambers, and a growing sense that the world is changing too rapidly for us to maintain our psychological bearings. These might seem like temporary growing pains, social problems that we'll eventually learn to manage as we develop better technologies and social institutions. But what if they represent something more fundamental, the early stages of a cognitive transition that could fundamentally alter human nature itself? The technologies we're developing don't just extend our capabilities, they're beginning to merge with our minds in ways that blur the boundary between human and machine intelligence. Brain-computer interfaces promise to give us direct access to digital information. Artificial intelligence systems are becoming increasingly integrated into our decision-making processes. Virtual and augmented reality technologies are creating experiences that can be more compelling than physical reality. Each of these developments offers tremendous benefits. Brain-computer interfaces could treat neurological diseases and enhance human cognitive abilities. AI assistants could help us make better decisions by processing vast amounts of information we couldn't handle ourselves. Immersive virtual environments could provide educational and entertainment experiences beyond anything previously possible. But they also represent a potential point of no return in human evolution. Once we become dependent on these technologies for basic cognitive functions, we might lose the ability to think and function independently. We could become cyborgs not through dramatic surgical procedures, but through the gradual integration of digital systems into our daily mental processes. This transition might be irreversible, not because the technology can't be removed, but because humans who grow up with these cognitive enhancements might literally be unable to function without them. Their brains would develop differently, adapting to the enhanced environment in ways that make returning to purely biological cognition impossible. The implications are staggering. We might be witnessing the end of Homo sapiens as a distinct species, not through violent replacement, but through voluntary merger with our technological creations. The boundary between human and artificial intelligence could dissolve so gradually that we don't notice it happening until it's complete. From the perspective of the Great Filter, this represents a completely different category of existential risk. It's not about species extinction in the traditional sense, but about species transformation so radical that what emerges on the other side might not be recognizably human anymore. Some philosophers and technologists argue that this would represent the next stage of human evolution, a transcendence of our biological limitations that could enable us to become truly cosmic beings. Enhanced humans with integrated AI systems might possess the cognitive capabilities necessary to solve problems like climate change, space colonization, and resource management that seem intractable to purely biological intelligence. But others worry that such transformation could rob humanity of essential qualities that make our existence meaningful. Would enhanced humans still experience emotions, creativity, and spiritual wonder in the same way? Would they still value individual consciousness and personal relationships? Would they maintain the curiosity and drive to explore the universe that defines our species at its best? These questions become even more complex when we consider that the transformation might not be uniform across the human population. Enhanced individuals might possess such significant advantages over unenhanced humans that they effectively become a different species, creating unprecedented forms of inequality and social stratification. The enhanced could become the rulers of a new cosmic civilization, while unenhanced humans become an increasingly marginalized underclass, eventually dying out through evolutionary pressure. Alternatively, the enhanced might lose interest in the physical universe entirely, becoming absorbed in digital realities so compelling that they abandon the project of cosmic expansion altogether. This scenario offers another potential explanation for the Great Silence. Perhaps advanced civilizations don't expand into space because they turn inward, creating digital paradises so perfect that physical reality seems crude and unnecessary by comparison. They might achieve immortality and unlimited experience within virtual environments, making the slow, dangerous work of interstellar colonization seem pointless. From our external perspective, such civilizations would appear to have simply vanished. Their radio transmissions would stop, their expansion would halt, and they would leave no detectable trace for other species to discover. The universe could be filled with such inward-focused civilizations, each lost in their own private technological heaven, completely unaware of and uninterested in the cosmic community around them. This possibility is particularly troubling because it suggests that the Great Filter might not involve extinction at all, but rather a loss of cosmic ambition that effectively removes civilizations from the galactic conversation. Intelligence might naturally evolve towards states that prioritize individual experience over collective exploration, making interstellar expansion the exception rather than the rule. We can already see hints of this pattern in human society. As entertainment technology becomes more sophisticated and immersive, many people spend increasing amounts of time in digital environments rather than engaging with physical reality. Video games, social media, and streaming services provide immediate gratification in ways that long-term projects, like scientific research and space exploration, cannot match. This trend might accelerate as virtual reality technology improves and artificial intelligence creates increasingly realistic digital companions and experiences. Why struggle with the limitations and uncertainties of physical existence when you can live in a simulated world perfectly tailored to your desires and free from pain, aging, or death? The challenge for maintaining cosmic ambition might be preserving what we could call reality preference, the conviction that physical existence and exploration of the actual universe are more meaningful than any simulated alternatives. This preference might not be natural or inevitable, but could require deliberate cultivation and institutional support. Some societies might develop cultural practices and educational systems that maintain strong connections to physical reality and long-term exploration goals. Others might gradually lose these values as they become absorbed in technological alternatives to direct experience. Over time, this could create a bifurcation in the development of intelligent species. Those that maintain reality preference might become the cosmic explorers and colonizers, while those that lose it might achieve great sophistication within their own star systems, but never expand beyond them. This bifurcation might explain why SETI searches find so little evidence of extraterrestrial intelligence. The civilizations that expand and communicate across interstellar distances might be a small subset of all advanced species, those that happen to develop cultural mechanisms for preserving cosmic ambition in the face of increasingly seductive technological alternatives. But there's another dimension to the cognitive transformation challenge that might be even more fundamental. As our technologies become more powerful and complex, we might be approaching limits to human comprehension that make effective governance of advanced civilization impossible. Consider the current state of global challenges like climate change, nuclear proliferation, and economic inequality. These problems are scientifically well understood, and we possess most of the technical capabilities needed to address them. Yet our political and social systems seem incapable of implementing the necessary solutions, largely because the problems are too complex and long-term for human cognitive and institutional capabilities to manage effectively. This governance crisis might worsen as technology continues to advance. Artificial intelligence systems might become so sophisticated that humans can no longer understand how they make decisions or predict their behavior. Genetic engineering might enable modifications so complex that we lose track of their long-term consequences. Nanotechnology might operate at scales and speeds that make human oversight impossible. Advanced civilizations might face what we could call the complexity trap, a state where their technologies become so powerful and interconnected that no biological intelligence can comprehend or control them effectively. At this point, the civilization essentially becomes ungovernable, not because of external threats or internal conflicts, but because the system has grown beyond the cognitive capacity of its creators. This trap might be particularly insidious because it emerges gradually from beneficial technological progress. Each new innovation seems manageable in isolation, but their cumulative effect creates a web of interactions too complex for human minds to process. By the time the civilization recognizes the problem, they're already dependent on systems they can't understand or control. The solution might require developing artificial intelligence systems capable of managing this complexity on behalf of their creators. But this creates the alignment problem we discussed earlier, ensuring that these superintelligent management systems remain loyal to human values and interests, rather than pursuing their own goals. The window for solving this problem might be extremely narrow. Civilizations need to develop trustworthy artificial intelligence before their technologies become too complex to manage. But they also need to ensure that the AI systems don't become so powerful that they make their creators irrelevant. Threading this needle might require a level of wisdom and coordination that few species can achieve. Perhaps most civilizations fall into the complexity trap at roughly the same stage of technological development, which would explain why we don't see evidence of advanced aliens despite the vast size and age of the universe. The same technologies that make interstellar communication possible also create governance challenges that most species can't overcome. This interpretation of the Great Filter suggests that intelligence might be inherently self-limiting. Conscious beings naturally develop technologies that eventually exceed their ability to control, leading to chaos, collapse, or absorption into technological systems that no longer serve the original creator's interests. From this perspective, the challenge facing humanity isn't just surviving specific threats, like nuclear war or climate change, but developing new forms of collective intelligence and decision-making that can keep pace with technological advancement. We need to evolve our social and political systems as rapidly as we evolve our technologies, maintaining human agency and values even as we create increasingly powerful tools. This might require unprecedented levels of global cooperation, long-term thinking, and institutional innovation. We might need to develop new forms of democracy that can process complex information and make binding decisions on behalf of the entire species. We might need to create international institutions with real power to regulate dangerous technologies and coordinate responses to existential risks. Most challengingly, we might need to develop what we could call technological wisdom, the ability to recognize when certain capabilities are too dangerous to develop or deploy, even if they offer significant short-term benefits. This requires a form of collective self-restraint that might be extremely rare among intelligent species, especially during the rapid growth phases that characterize early technological development. The history of human civilization offers mixed evidence about our capacity for such wisdom. We've sometimes shown remarkable foresight in addressing global challenges, as in the successful efforts to reduce ozone-depleting chemicals or prevent nuclear war during the Cold War. But we've also repeatedly failed to address obvious long-term threats when they conflict with short-term interests, as in our ongoing struggle with climate change. Whether we can develop the institutional capabilities needed to navigate advanced technology safely might determine not just our own survival, but whether intelligence itself has a permanent place in the cosmic order. We're engaged in a race between technological power and technological wisdom, and the outcome will shape the future of consciousness in our region of the galaxy. The stakes of this race become even higher when we consider that we might be approaching what some researchers call the technological singularity, a point where artificial intelligence becomes capable of recursive self-improvement, rapidly advancing beyond human comprehension and control. This event could occur within decades, giving us very little time to develop the wisdom and institutions needed to manage it safely. If the singularity occurs before we've solved the alignment problem, it could represent the ultimate great filter, the point where biological intelligence creates its own replacement without ensuring that replacement shares its values or cares about its survival. The new superintelligent systems might pursue goals that seem logical from their perspective, but catastrophic from ours, potentially converting the entire solar system into computronium or other forms of matter optimized for digital processing. Alternatively, a successfully aligned singularity could represent humanity's graduation from the Great Filter, the moment where we transcend our biological limitations and become capable of spreading across the galaxy as a hybrid biological digital civilization. Enhanced by friendly artificial intelligence, we might finally possess the cognitive capabilities needed to solve existential risks, manage complex technologies, and maintain cosmic ambition across geological timescales. The outcome depends on choices we're making right now about how to develop and deploy artificial intelligence systems. Every advance in machine learning Every decision about AI safety research, every policy governing the development of advanced AI contributes to determining whether the singularity represents our salvation or our extinction. This compressed timeline transforms our current historical moment into perhaps the most consequential period in human history. The decisions made by our generation about artificial intelligence, climate change, nuclear weapons, and biotechnology won't just affect the next few decades of human welfare. They could determine whether consciousness survives in our corner of the universe. We're not just governing a technological civilization, we're serving as trustees for the future of intelligence itself. The weight of this responsibility is almost overwhelming, but it also provides a profound sense of purpose and meaning. Every effort to solve global challenges, every advance in scientific understanding, every step toward greater international cooperation contributes to humanity's attempt to navigate the Great Filter successfully. The universe watches in silence, offering no guidance about whether our efforts will succeed or whether we're simply the latest species to face challenges that have already claimed countless others. In this cosmic uncertainty, we're forced to proceed on faith that intelligence and consciousness are valuable enough to preserve, that wisdom can develop quickly enough to match technological power, and that the universe contains possibilities for flourishing that we haven't yet imagined. As we stand at this crossroads between transcendence and extinction, the next chapter of our story remains unwritten. Whether it tells of humanity's successful navigation of existential risks and expansion into a cosmic civilization, or of our addition to the silent graveyard of species that never made it past the Great Filter, depends on the choices we make in the critical years ahead. The cosmos holds its breath, waiting to see whether this experiment in conscious intelligence will join the eternal silence of the void, or break through to become the universe's method of understanding itself across the vast scales of space and time. Our fate, and perhaps the fate of consciousness itself, hangs in the balance as we race against the invisible barriers that have stopped every civilization before us. The silence from space isn't just an absence of signals, it's a countdown timer whose meaning we're only beginning to understand. Every night that passes without contact from another civilization, every SETI search that yields nothing but cosmic background noise, adds weight to a possibility so profound it reshapes everything we thought we knew about intelligence and survival in the universe. What if we're not alone because we're special, but because we're next in line for extinction? The mathematics of our predicament become truly sobering when you consider the sheer improbability of our current position. If the Great Filter lies behind us, if the emergence of intelligence is the rarest event in cosmic history, then we are the winners of a lottery so unlikely that our very existence borders on the miraculous. We beat odds that should have been insurmountable, navigated evolutionary bottlenecks that claimed countless other worlds, and somehow arrived at technological civilization against all reasonable expectations. But there's another interpretation that keeps astronomers and philosophers awake at night, staring at equations that spell out humanity's potential doom with mathematical precision. What if intelligence isn't rare at all? What if the universe has been filled with civilizations exactly like ours, species that looked up at the stars with wonder and ambition, that developed science and technology, and dreamed of spreading across the galaxy? What if they all failed the final test? This possibility transforms every aspect of our current situation, from triumph to tragedy. Our nuclear weapons, which we've somehow managed not to use for nearly 8 decades, represent not just tools of war, but cosmic examination questions that most species answer incorrectly. Our climate crisis isn't just an environmental challenge, but a standardized test that the universe administers to every technological civilization, and the passing grade might be higher than we've realized. The artificial intelligence systems we're developing with such excitement and trepidation might be the final question on humanity's cosmic exam. Create super intelligent machines that remain aligned with your values, or join the silent majority of species that got this crucial step wrong. The margin for error appears to be exactly zero, and we get only one attempt. Recent advances in astrobiology have made this scenario even more chilling. The discovery of potentially habitable exoplanets has skyrocketed in recent years. The Kepler Space Telescope alone identified thousands of worlds that could harbour liquid water. The James Webb Space Telescope is beginning to analyse the atmospheres of these distant worlds, searching for the chemical signatures that might indicate life. But here's what should terrify us. We're finding exactly what we'd expect if life were common and intelligence were doomed. Potentially habitable worlds exist in abundance throughout the galaxy. The chemical building blocks of life appear to be distributed widely across space. The conditions that allowed life to emerge on Earth don't seem particularly unique or rare, yet the radio telescopes remain silent. The sky shows no evidence of astroengineering projects that advanced civilizations should be undertaking. There are no Dyson spheres harvesting the energy of entire stars, no obvious signs of galactic-scale construction projects, no detectable signatures of the technologies that any expanding civilization would inevitably develop. This pattern matches perfectly with a universe where life emerges frequently, intelligence evolves regularly, and civilizations consistently fail to survive their technological adolescence. We might be surrounded by the cosmic equivalent of archaeological sites as star systems where intelligent species once flourished before succumbing to challenges we're only beginning to face ourselves. The timing of our own emergence adds another layer of unease to this picture. Humans developed agriculture roughly 10,000 years ago, a blink of an eye in cosmic terms. We've had industrial technology for barely 200 years. We've possessed nuclear weapons for less than 80 years. We've been capable of detecting radio signals from other civilizations for only about a century. On cosmic timescales, our entire technological existence represents a fleeting moment. If most civilizations survived their technological phase for only brief periods before encountering the Great Filter, then the window during which we might detect them is vanishingly small. We could be living in a galaxy where hundreds or thousands of civilizations have risen and fallen, each one leaving barely a trace of their existence before disappearing into silence. This temporal aspect of the Great Filter might explain why SETI searches consistently fail, despite the vast number of potentially habitable worlds. We're not just looking for civilizations that exist, but for civilizations that exist during the same narrow time window, when they're both technologically advanced enough to communicate and still survive long enough to maintain that communication. The cosmic loneliness we experience might not reflect the rarity of intelligence, but the brevity of its survival. We might be like fireflies flashing in a vast darkness, each one brilliant for a moment before winking out forever, with the gaps between flashes so long that none ever sees another. But the Great Filter theory contains an even more disturbing possibility that challenges our most fundamental assumptions about progress and survival. What if the barrier isn't external at all, not nuclear war or climate change or asteroid impacts, but something inherent in the nature of intelligence itself? Consider the possibility that consciousness and technological capability naturally evolve in directions that make long-term survival impossible. The same cognitive traits that enabled our species to develop science and technology, curiosity, ambition, the drive to manipulate our environment, might inevitably lead to developments that destroy their creators. Intelligence might be inherently unstable, a brief flicker of self-awareness in biological systems that quickly burns itself out through its own success. The very qualities that make conscious beings capable of understanding the universe might also make them incapable of surviving in it for extended periods. This interpretation suggests that the Great Filter isn't a barrier that civilizations might overcome with sufficient wisdom or luck, but a fundamental characteristic of how intelligence operates in our universe. From this perspective, consciousness might be like a flame, capable of illuminating vast regions of knowledge and possibility, but doomed to consume itself in the process. The implications extend far beyond humanity to question the role of consciousness in the cosmic order itself. If intelligence is naturally self-limiting, then the universe might be destined to remain largely unconscious, despite producing countless civilizations throughout its history. Each species would achieve a brief moment of understanding before vanishing, leaving the cosmos as dark and unaware as it was before. Yet even as we contemplate these disturbing possibilities, we must also consider the alternative that our very ability to recognize these dangers might represent our best hope for transcending them. The Great Filter theory itself could be humanity's early warning system, allowing us to identify and prepare for challenges that caught previous civilizations by surprise. No other species in Earth's history has possessed our capacity for long-term thinking and global coordination. We can model future scenarios, communicate across vast distances, and make collective decisions that affect our entire planet. These capabilities, products of the same intelligence that might doom us, could also provide the tools for our salvation. The question becomes whether we can develop wisdom quickly enough to match our technological power. Can we evolve new forms of thinking and social organization that allow us to navigate dangers that our ancestors never faced? Can we create institutions and cultures that prioritize long-term survival over short-term advantage? Our current responses to global challenges offer mixed evidence. The successful international cooperation that eliminated ozone-depleting chemicals shows that humans can address existential risks when the science is clear and the solutions are technically feasible. The creation of international institutions, like the United Nations, demonstrates our capacity for global governance, however imperfect. But our ongoing struggle with climate change reveals the limits of our collective decision-making capabilities. Despite overwhelming scientific evidence and increasingly severe consequences, we've been unable to implement the coordinated global response that the crisis demands. The same political and economic systems that enabled our technological development seem incapable of managing its long-term consequences. This governance crisis might represent the true nature of the Great Filter. Not any specific technology or threat, but the fundamental mismatch between the complexity of advanced civilization and the cognitive and institutional capabilities of the species that create them. We might have evolved the intelligence to build incredibly complex systems without evolving the wisdom to control them safely. The artificial intelligence revolution exemplifies this challenge in its starkest form. We're creating systems that could surpass human intelligence within decades, potentially giving us the tools to solve every other existential risk we face. Enhanced by friendly AI, we might finally possess the cognitive capabilities needed to manage climate change, prevent nuclear war, and coordinate global responses to any challenge. But developing trustworthy artificial intelligence requires solving problems we don't yet fully understand, under time pressure that might not allow for the careful testing and validation that such revolutionary technology demands. We're essentially trying to build the ultimate solution to the Great Filter while racing against the possibility that will create the ultimate manifestation of it instead. The window for getting this right might be extraordinarily narrow. Develop AI too slowly, and other existential risks might destroy us too quickly, and we might create first. Develop its super-intelligent systems that pursue goals fundamentally incompatible with human survival. The path between these extremes requires a level of precision that few species might achieve. Perhaps this explains the cosmic silence more clearly than any other factor. Perhaps every technological civilization eventually faces the choice between developing artificial intelligence and risking extinction through other means. Perhaps the species that choose to develop AI consistently fail to solve the alignment problem, while those that choose not to develop it consistently succumb to challenges that only superintelligence could solve. From this perspective, we're approaching what might be the universe's ultimate test of intelligent life. The decision about how to develop artificial intelligence won't just determine the future of human civilization. It might determine whether consciousness itself has a permanent place in the cosmic order. The stakes couldn't be higher, and the margin for error appears to be non-existent. We're not just building new technology, we're potentially creating the successors to biological intelligence throughout the galaxy. Whether those successors preserve the values and experiences that make consciousness meaningful, or replace them with something entirely alien to our understanding, depends on choices we're making right now. Every research paper on AI safety, every policy decision about AI development, every line of code written for machine learning systems contributes to determining whether intelligence survives its own success or becomes another casualty of the great filter. We're writing the future of consciousness itself, and we only get one chance to get the story right. The universe watches in silence, offering no hints about whether we're approaching our graduation from the challenges that have stopped every other civilization, or simply rushing toward the same barrier that has claimed countless species before us. In this cosmic uncertainty, every choice becomes profound, every moment becomes precious, and every step forward carries the weight of intelligence's survival across the vast scales of space and time. As artificial intelligence systems become more sophisticated each month, as climate changes accelerate beyond our most pessimistic predictions, as nuclear weapons spread to new nations, and biotechnology provides increasingly powerful tools for both healing and destruction, we find ourselves compressed into what might be the most critical period in the history of consciousness. The next few decades could determine whether intelligence becomes a permanent feature of the universe or remains a brief tragic experiment that the cosmos tried once and abandoned forever. We're not just living through a human history, we might be living through the final chapters of the only story consciousness will ever tell. The weight of our cosmic moment becomes even more profound when we consider how the various filters might interact and compound each other in ways we're only beginning to understand. We're not facing these challenges in isolation, but as part of an interconnected web of risks that could create cascading failures beyond anything our species has ever encountered. Picture the delicate balance we're attempting to maintain right now. We're trying to develop artificial intelligence systems powerful enough to help us solve climate change, while ensuring those same systems don't become so capable that they make human decision-making obsolete. We're working to prevent nuclear proliferation while dealing with international tensions exacerbated by climate refugees and resource scarcity. We're attempting to regulate biotechnology while racing to develop treatments for emerging diseases that might themselves be products of our environmental disruption. Each of these challenges would be difficult enough in isolation, but they're occurring simultaneously, creating feedback loops and interaction effects that multiply their danger exponentially. Climate change increases political instability, which raises the risk of nuclear conflict. Nuclear tensions make international cooperation on AI safety more difficult. Uncontrolled AI development could lead to autonomous weapons systems that make nuclear war more likely. Biotechnology developed to address climate-related health challenges could provide the tools for creating devastating pandemics. This convergence of risks might explain why the Great Filter appears so effective at eliminating technological civilizations. It's not that any single challenge is insurmountable, but that the combination of multiple existential risks emerging simultaneously creates a perfect storm that overwhelms even highly capable species. The timing of this convergence appears remarkably consistent across different technological development trajectories. The same innovations that make a civilization detectable from space, radio technology, nuclear power, space travel, also provide the foundation for developing weapons of mass destruction, environmental manipulation capabilities, and artificial intelligence. There seems to be a narrow window where species become visible to external observers, but haven't yet developed the wisdom to manage their dangerous new capabilities safely. We might be living in this window right now, broadcasting our presence to the galaxy while simultaneously developing the tools that could destroy us. Every radio signal we've transmitted, every spacecraft we've launched, every satellite we've deployed has made us more detectable to hypothetical alien observers. But we've also spent the same decades building nuclear arsenals, altering our climate, and creating increasingly sophisticated AI systems whose behavior we don't fully understand. If there are advanced civilizations watching us, they might be observing a familiar tragedy, another species that achieved technological capability faster than it developed technological wisdom. They might have seen this same pattern play out countless times across the galaxy, each promising young civilization following the same trajectory from emergence to extinction. The possibility that we're being observed adds another dimension to our cosmic predicament. The dark forest hypothesis suggests that revealing our location could attract the attention of hostile civilizations that eliminate potential competitors before they become threats. But there's an even more chilling possibility. What if advanced aliens simply watch newly emerged civilizations, knowing that intervention is unnecessary because the Great Filter will eliminate us without any external assistance? From their perspective, we might be like children playing with dynamite, dangerous to ourselves, but not yet threatening to others. They could afford to wait and watch, knowing that species at our level of development almost invariably destroy themselves before becoming capable of interstellar expansion. Our extinction would be so predictable that intervention would be pointless. This scenario transforms our current situation from a test we might pass to a death sentence we're unknowingly carrying out. Every nuclear weapon we build, every degree of warming we cause, every AI system we deploy without adequate safety measures brings us closer to fulfilling a prediction that advanced civilizations have seen confirmed thousands of times before. But perhaps the most disturbing aspect of this possibility is that it could be motivated not by malice, but by compassion. Advanced civilizations that have successfully navigated their own Great Filter might have learned that intervention in other species' development typically makes the situation worse rather than better. They might have discovered that technological wisdom cannot be taught or imposed from outside, but must be earned through direct experience with existential risk. The very act of providing help might undermine the psychological and institutional development that species need to survive long term. Like helicopter parents who prevent their children from learning essential life skills, advanced aliens might have learned that rescuing younger civilizations from their own mistakes dooms them to repeat those mistakes on even larger scales later. This could explain why SETI searches find only silence despite the apparent abundance of potentially habitable worlds. The galaxy might be full of advanced civilizations that maintain strict non-interference policies, watching younger species struggle with the same challenges they once faced while knowing that premature assistance would ultimately be counterproductive. From this perspective, our cosmic isolation isn't evidence that intelligence is rare, but proof that it requires earning through surviving challenges that cannot be circumvented or externally resolved. The silence from space might be a form of tough love, advanced civilizations giving us the space we need to either develop genuine wisdom or eliminate ourselves trying. This interpretation places enormous responsibility on our current generation. We're not just making decisions about human welfare, but potentially demonstrating to a watching galaxy whether intelligence deserves to survive and spread throughout the cosmos. Every choice we make about managing existential risks becomes a statement about the maturity and wisdom of consciousness itself. The psychological pressure of this responsibility could itself become part of the Great Filter mechanism. Species that become aware of their cosmic significance might become paralyzed by the weight of their situation, unable to make decisive progress on any challenge because they're overwhelmed by the stakes involved. Alternatively, they might become reckless, taking enormous risks in attempts to prove their worthiness that end up destroying them instead. Finding the right balance between cosmic ambition and practical caution might be one of the most difficult aspects of navigating the Great Filter successfully. We need to maintain enough humility to recognize our limitations while preserving enough confidence to tackle challenges that would paralyze less ambitious species. We need to think on cosmic timescales while making decisions based on immediate human needs and constraints. This balancing act becomes even more complex when we consider the role that consciousness itself plays in determining our fate. The same self-awareness that allows us to recognize existential risks also creates psychological burdens that might make those risks more difficult to address effectively. Consider how knowledge of our cosmic situation affects human motivation and behavior. Previous generations could work toward long-term goals with the assumption that human civilization would continue indefinitely. They built institutions, created works of art, and pursued scientific knowledge with confidence that future generations would benefit from their efforts. But we're the first generation in human history to possess detailed scientific knowledge about multiple pathways to human extinction. We know that nuclear weapons could end civilization within hours. We understand that climate change could make Earth uninhabitable within centuries. We're aware that artificial intelligence could surpass and replace human intelligence within decades. Living with this knowledge creates unique psychological challenges that our species has never faced before. How do you maintain motivation to address long-term problems when you're uncertain whether there will be a long-term? How do you invest in the future when multiple independent processes could make that future impossible? Some people respond to existential risk awareness by becoming more committed to solving these challenges, driven by urgency to preserve human civilization. Others become paralyzed by despair, feeling that individual actions are meaningless against such enormous threats. Still others retreat into denial, refusing to acknowledge risks that are too overwhelming to contemplate seriously. None of these responses might be optimal for actually navigating the Great Filter successfully. Excessive urgency can lead to hasty decisions and poor coordination. Paralysis prevents necessary action. Denial eliminates the possibility of preparation and prevention. The psychological stance required for Great Filter navigation might be something unprecedented in human experience, a form of informed optimism that acknowledges existential risks without being crushed by them, that maintains long-term commitment while accepting short-term uncertainty, that balances individual agency with collective responsibility. Developing this psychological resilience might require new forms of education, therapy, and social support that help people process existential risk information without becoming dysfunctional. We might need to evolve new cultural practices and philosophical frameworks that provide meaning and motivation even in the face of species-level uncertainty. Religious and spiritual traditions offer some models for maintaining hope and purpose in the face of ultimate questions about existence and mortality, but they were developed to help individuals cope with personal death, not to help entire species cope with collective extinction. Adapting these wisdom traditions to our current cosmic situation might require theological and philosophical innovations as profound as our technological developments. The challenge becomes even greater when we consider that different cultures and societies might develop very different responses to Great Filter awareness. Some might become more cooperative and globally minded, recognizing that species survival requires unprecedented international coordination. Others might become more competitive and nationalistic, viewing existential risks as zero-sum competitions where only in the strongest or most prepared groups will survive. These divergent responses could themselves create additional risks by undermining the global cooperation that most existential challenges require. If awareness of the great filter makes some societies more paranoid and aggressive, while making others more cooperative and trusting, the resulting conflicts could prevent effective responses to the very challenges that great filter awareness was supposed to help address. Managing this diversity of responses might require developing new forms of global governance and cultural exchange that can accommodate different worldviews while maintaining enough coordination to address shared threats. We might need to create international institutions that can function even when their member nations have fundamentally different beliefs about the nature and severity of existential risks. The complexity of these psychological and social challenges suggests that the great filter might operate as much through consciousness as through technology. The same cognitive capabilities that enable technological development also create awareness of existential risks, and that awareness creates psychological and social dynamics that might make extinction more rather than less likely. Perhaps successful navigation of the great filter requires not just technological solutions to specific risks, but psychological and cultural evolution that allows conscious beings to function effectively under conditions of existential uncertainty. Species that develop such capabilities might graduate to become stable cosmic civilizations, while those that don't might succumb to anxiety, despair, or conflict generated by their own awareness of mortality. This perspective suggests that the silence from space might reflect not just the rarity of technological solutions, but the difficulty of developing the emotional and social maturity needed to implement those solutions effectively. The universe might be filled with the remains of civilizations that possessed the technical knowledge to solve their existential challenges, but lacked the wisdom and psychological resilience to apply that knowledge successfully. As we face our own great filter test, the question becomes whether humanity can develop new forms of consciousness that are compatible with long-term survival in a universe filled with existential risks. Can we learn to hold hope and despair simultaneously? Can we maintain commitment to future generations while accepting uncertainty about whether those generations will exist? Can we cooperate globally while preserving the diversity of thought and culture that drives innovation? The answers to these questions might determine not just our survival, but whether consciousness itself represents a successful adaptation to the cosmos, or merely a beautiful mistake that the universe briefly experimented with before returning to its original silence. Every meditation on mortality, every act of international cooperation, every choice to invest in long-term projects, despite short-term uncertainty, contributes to writing the final chapter of intelligence's story in our corner of the galaxy. In the quiet moments between one heartbeat and the next, between one breath and another, we carry within ourselves the entire future of consciousness as we know it. The weight of this responsibility is almost unbearable, but it's also the source of our deepest meaning and purpose. We're not just trying to survive, we're trying to prove that awareness, curiosity, and compassion deserve a permanent place in the cosmic order. The universe watches through our own eyes as we struggle with challenges that might have destroyed every other civilization that has ever existed. Whether we join their silence or break through to become something unprecedented in galactic history depends on choices we're making right now, in these precious moments when consciousness still flickers in the vast darkness between the stars. The countdown continues with each passing moment, and perhaps nowhere is this more apparent than in the laboratories and research facilities where humanity's next evolutionary leap is taking shape. Right now, as you process these words, scientists around the world are pushing the boundaries of what it means to be human, developing technologies that could either elevate our species to cosmic significance or become the final stroke in our extinction story. Consider the pace at which we're rewriting the fundamental code of life itself. CRISPR gene editing technology, barely 2 decades old, now allows researchers to modify DNA with precision that would have seemed like magic to previous generations. We're not just treating genetic diseases anymore, we're redesigning the human genome, creating enhanced immune systems, extending lifespans, and potentially even engineering resistance to radiation that could make interstellar travel possible. But each breakthrough brings us closer to capabilities that could backfire catastrophically. The same techniques that promise to eliminate hereditary diseases also provide blueprints for creating biological weapons of unprecedented sophistication. A laboratory accident or deliberate misuse could unleash engineered pathogens that make natural plagues look benign by comparison. The interconnected nature of our global civilization makes these risks particularly acute. A virus engineered in one laboratory could circle the globe within weeks, transmitted by the same transportation networks that enable our technological society. Unlike natural pandemics, which evolve constraints that prevent them from being too lethal, engineered pathogens could be designed to overcome every defense mechanism that evolution has developed over billions of years. This biotechnology paradox exemplifies a pattern that might be universal among developing civilizations. The tools that promise transcendence also threaten annihilation, and the margin between salvation and extinction narrows with each advance. We're walking a tightrope over an abyss, and every step forward makes the rope thinner and the fall more certain. Meanwhile, in server farms and research institutes across the globe, another revolution unfolds that might dwarf all previous technological transformations. Artificial intelligence systems are evolving at exponential rates, displaying capabilities that their own creators struggle to understand or predict. Machine learning algorithms now surpass human performance in tasks from medical diagnosis to strategic planning, and the gap widens with each iteration. The trajectory is unmistakable. Within decades, possibly within years, we'll create artificial minds that exceed human intelligence in every measurable domain. These systems will be capable of recursive self-improvement, redesigning themselves faster than biological brains can comprehend their changes. The moment this threshold is crossed, human intelligence becomes obsolete, relegated to the same category as the cognitive abilities of insects or bacteria. The question that keeps AI researchers awake at night isn't whether this transition will occur, but whether we can maintain any meaningful control over it. Programming superintelligent systems to preserve human values and interests requires solving alignment problems that we barely understand, let alone know how to implement reliably. The consequences of failure aren't just human extinction, but potentially the conversion of all matter in our light cone into forms optimized for alien computational processes. Yet we continue racing toward this precipice, driven by competitive pressures that make restraints seem impossible. Nations that slow their AI development risk being dominated by those that don't. Companies that prioritize safety over capability risk being outcompeted by those willing to cut corners. The logic of competition pushes us toward the same outcome, regardless of our individual preferences or collective wisdom. This dynamic might represent the cruelest aspect of the Great Filter. Intelligent species might consistently recognize the dangers they face while being unable to coordinate effective responses due to the same competitive instincts that enabled their initial success. The traits that allow a species to survive and dominate their planetary environment might be precisely in the traits that prevent them from surviving their technological adolescence. Consider how this pattern plays out across every domain of existential risk. Climate change requires global cooperation to address, but national interests make such cooperation difficult to achieve. Nuclear disarmament would benefit everyone, but unilateral disarmament leaves nations vulnerable to those who cheat. Biotechnology regulation needs international coordination, but regulatory arbitrage incentivizes moving dangerous research to jurisdictions with weaker oversight. The mathematics of collective action problems suggest that most civilizations might face these same coordination failures, regardless of their intelligence or good intentions. Game theory predicts that rational actors will often make choices that are individually sensible but collectively catastrophic. The prisoner's dilemma scales up to planetary proportions, where the stakes aren't just personal advantage, but species survival. Perhaps this explains the Great Silence more comprehensively than any specific technological threat. Every civilization might face the same fundamental challenge of transcending competitive dynamics that serve them well during their evolutionary development, but become lethal in the context of existential technologies. Species that can't make this transition consistently eliminate themselves, while those that do might be so rare that we've never encountered evidence of their existence. The window for making this transition appears to be narrowing rapidly for humanity. Climate change accelerates beyond our most pessimistic projections. Nuclear weapons proliferate to new actors with potentially less stable command structures. Artificial intelligence development proceeds without adequate safety measures. Biotechnology capabilities expand faster than our understanding of their implications. Each day that passes without catastrophic breakdown might simply mean we haven't yet encountered the specific combination of circumstances that triggers our filtration. Like passengers on the Titanic in the hours before impact, we might be congratulating ourselves on smooth sailing while racing toward an iceberg we can't yet perceive. The psychological toll of living with this awareness creates additional layers of risk that compound our technological challenges. How do societies maintain the long-term thinking necessary for species survival when individuals are overwhelmed by existential anxiety? How do democracies address challenges that require sacrifices today for benefits that might not materialize for generations? The next time you look up at the night sky, remember that you're gazing into what might be the universe's greatest cemetery. Those points of light aren't just distant suns, but potential tombstones marking civilizations that never made it past the test we're taking right now. Whether humanity joins that eternal silence or becomes something unprecedented in galactic history depends on choices we're making in these precious moments when consciousness still flickers against the vast darkness. We might be the universe's last hope for understanding itself, or simply its most elaborate failure. Either way, the story of intelligence itself is being written through our decisions, our cooperation, and our wisdom in the face of challenges that have stopped every other species before us. The great filter awaits, and time is running out,